Hi, it's Jen here from Jen's Homemadeology, and today we are going to be making the Xaira charm from Sewfisticated Craft Designs. This pattern makes the perfect gift bag for all occasions. Occasions like Christmas, Valentine's Day. It will make the perfect little Halloween trick-or-treat bag. Or even times like New Year's for the Lunar New Year. In this tutorial today, we are going to be making this Halloween inspired Xaira charm that features a grab handle and the drawstring closure. It is a very quick and beginner friendly pattern that has box corners. There's the top accent panel. You could actually make this even a quicker make by using the pattern piece for the lining as also the pattern piece for the exterior. Also in this tutorial, I will be showing you how I made the Xaira charm using a printed directional vinyl, the bottom piece. Which I think leads to some very cute options. We are now going to go ahead and walk through the supplies and pieces needed to make the Xaira charm. First off, you need 2 pieces of cord. It can be either cotton, nylon, or paracord. Optional is a cord cap. These were called bell stoppers. Some come with caps and some don't. Your grab handle, which needs to be made out of a lightweight material. I'm using Sewfisticated Luxe. Your top accent piece, which is also going to be made out of a lightweight material like cotton or Sewfisticated Deluxe, just something thin and that has relatively nice gathering. And you will need 2 pieces of A for your top exterior. For your bottom exterior, piece A1, you're going to need to cut 1 exterior in a heavyweight material, such as vinyl, or you can do an Oxford 300D or 600D waterproof canvas with a PU backing, which, if I can get it off the thing, has this really thick backing, so it has nice structure to it as a vinyl would. And then the final piece that you would need is piece B for your lining. In this video, I'm also going to show you how I hacked piece A1 to use a directional vinyl on my bottom half. I went ahead and took my pattern piece for A1, folded it in half, and then I measured down my seam allowance of 3/8, and then I folded it at that seam allowance. And then I took the longer of the 2 down hangs and flipped back the opposite wings of the one, and then I used this as my pattern piece template. So that way I could cut 2 directional prints on the top, and I will go ahead and attach them this way with my 3/8 seam allowance, and then I will have the same pattern piece as this. We are going to go ahead and start sewing our Pandora. Lauren, you're going to start off with your piece C, which is your grab handle. And per step 1, you're going to go ahead and mark a line down the middle of your fabric. And then you're going to take the measurement on the 2 short sides from step 1 and measure those in. You're going to go ahead and put double-sided tape down on your 2 short edges. Followed by your 2 long edges. And then we are going to go ahead and fold in the 2 short edges first. So we're going to go ahead and fold up to the line. And then repeat on the other short side. Now we're going to remove the long sides and meet those to the middle. And then also repeat that on the other side. And then you're going to want to snip those short seam allowance corners to reduce bulk. And now you're going to go ahead and put double-sided tape on one of the long edges. And then we can fold this in half to form our handle. We're going to go ahead and top stitch around the perimeter with a 1/8 seam allowance. And a tip in order to create a straight handle is to make sure that you top stitch in the same direction on opposite sides of the handle. And then since I top stitched down this way, I'm going to go ahead and flip over and top stitch starting from the same direction on the opposite side. And then you can see it starts to twist, and once I top stitch down, it shouldn't be twisted anymore. And that will be our complete handle. We can go ahead and set this aside. We are now going to move on to our exterior panel. So you will need your piece A1, which is your exterior bottom, and then both of your pieces A for your top accent panels. If you have a logo tag, you are going to want to attach it per the instructions in step 4. It'll be placed about here. Since I'm not going to be using a logo tag, I'm going to skip to step 5, which has you attaching your top exterior panels to your base. So you're going to align your A1, your A to your A1. And they're going to be right sides together along the long edge. And if you are using a directional print for your piece A, make sure that the bottom half of it meets the long edge. And we're going to go ahead and repeat that same thing on the opposite side. Fabrics right sides together along the long edge. And the bottom side of your piece A is the side that you are joining. And then we are going to sew these together with a 3/8 seam allowance. And we're going to go ahead and trim our seam allowance corners. Okay. And then we're going to want to press open our seams with our seam facing upwards. And now you're going to go ahead and top stitch that with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat that to the opposite side. Before I move on to the final assembly, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I sewed the piece A1 with directional fabric. Remember, I went ahead and folded piece A1 in half and then added a 3/8 seam allowance to it to make 2 separate pieces. Now I'm going to go ahead and place those pieces right sides together. And I'm gonna sew with a 3/8 seam allowance. Go ahead and clip your corners to reduce your bulk. And go ahead and turn out and press open your seam. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and top stitch along both sides of the seam with a 1/8 seam allowance. And then that would be my completed bottom piece. And then you would go ahead and continue as normal, as with attaching your A's. I would say before you top stitched, if you want to make sure, you can go ahead and grab your piece A1 and just ensure that it turned the same size before continuing. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to this make, and we are going to move on to our final assembly. To take our lining piece B, and on the right side of it, you are going to make the markings stated in step 7 on both sides. Once you have made your markings per step 7 on your lining, for your string encasing in the final steps, you make sure you do not want to miss this part. Make your markings done in some type of erasable pen or chalk, just so they won't be there or be visible once the bag is completed. And then if you have a little label tag that you would like to place, you are going to follow the steps in step 8 for the placement. We are now going to go ahead and take both of our fabrics and place them right sides together, so your exterior and your lining. Before I clip down and stitch my lining to my exterior, I like to just fold in half to ensure that I made my lines even on my lining. So I'm going to go ahead and clip against the long edges. Alright, we are now going to sew both of our long edges with a 3/8 seam allowance. And I'll repeat on the other side. Now Go ahead and snip your corners. And one of the other things that you can do in order to make a really super quick make is to do a lining and exterior of just using the piece B. And then you would just have two of these that you would put together, of which you would start from the step 7. Now we are going to make the area for our drawstring casing. So you are going to go ahead and match together your linings and your exterior from the seams. Make sure that they line up at the bottom. And now what you're going to do is you're going to want to either iron or press open this seam of the top of the bag from where you joined the lining and the exterior together. And you're going to want to do that on both sides. Once those are pressed, you are going to want to take the measurements from step 10 and mark down from this joint seams, those markings. Once you make your markings per step 10, I like to once again fold them in half and line up everything to make sure that my casing lines will be even, because if not, that could cause problems later. I just pinch on top of each of them. Once I ensured that and made my markings, I'm going to go ahead and baste in these joined spots on each side to ensure that everything lines up neatly. Now we are going to want to sew against our two long edges, leaving about a 4-inch gap for our lining. You want to ensure that these stay open. I'm going to place 2 clips on my casing. I placed 2 clips over my casing area just to ensure that I do not sew over that space. And then on the other side, I'm just not going to sew in that, but you won't leave an opening in your lining. I'm going to sew the side that I have marked for my lining opening, which would be opposite from the side that you placed a tag, if you did place a tag on it. And then we are going to sew this with a 3/8 seam allowance. Okay, make sure you skip over that gap. And then we're going to go ahead, continue up the side, making sure our seam is pressed open on both sides, and we're going to stop at that start of the casing. Now with this one, you do not want to sew across this opening. And restart at the marking of the bottom part of the casing. And then we can continue down onto the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and work on the other side. And then we only have to stop and make sure that we leave that casing opening. Again, sewing with the 3/8 seam allowance. Okay, and just make sure that your seams are pressed open on the top and the bottom. Now you can continue on till the end. Okay, so on your exterior fabric from where your casing is, you're going to want to press open and either apply some double-sided tape there or fabric glue. So this will make threading your strings and cords through in the final assembly a whole lot easier. And you'll want to do that on both sides of the fabric and both ends of the fabric. Now we can move on to our box corners. Go ahead and open those up so you're placing the right sides together, matching your center points of those boxes, along with opening up that seam allowance. Do that on the other side. open up that seam allowance. Now we're going to go ahead and stitch both of these sides with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now we're going to repeat the same thing with our lining. Repeating the same thing with our lining. And pressing open that seam. Same thing for the other side. Okay, and again, we are going to sew these with a 3/8 seam allowance. Now that we have stitched together all of our box corners, we are going to take the side opposite from our gap hole in our lining, and we are going to meet the two edges of our exterior and lining together. And then we are going to sew this together with a 1/4 seam allowance. And then within doing so, this is going to make sure that our lining sits more neatly into our bag. Now, depending on your fabric choices and your machine capability, you can also do the same to the other side of your corners and match those and sew those with a 1/4 seam allowance, keeping in mind that also within doing so, this will make the birthing process a little harder. We are now going to go ahead and birth our bag. You want to make sure that you're happy with all of your stitches before closing up this gap. Now we're going to stitch this opening close with a 1/8 seam allowance. Now to make this seam not stand out as much, you will want to use a thread that matches your lining for the purpose of this video so you can actually see it. I'm just keeping with my white. Okay. We're going to go ahead and fully turn that out. Now we are going to go ahead and move on to our drawstring casing with the grab handle. We are going to attach our grab handle, and you want to place the bottom of your grab handle 3/8 below your bottom marking. My markings are now very kind of faint. And you want it to be centered up with your seam. And then we are going to use painter's tape to hold that in place. And we are going to repeat the same thing on the other side. There's my bottom marking into my bag that I made earlier. We're gonna start at that top marking, and we are going to sew around our bag, making sure that our fabric is smooth and lies flat. I detached my handle. I'm just going to reattach it. Okay, marking. Okay, and then you will need to repeat the same for the bottom row of stitches, and keeping in mind that you do not need to backstack at the beginning. Just make sure that you overlap your starting stitches when you end to secure them. Another tip is that you will be sewing with your bobbin thread as your exterior. So you might need to switch that to a contrasting matching fabric. Once you're done making sure that you're happy with all your final stitches, we can move on to our final touches, which you will need your thread, and then if you have any closures, you can go ahead and do that. And we're gonna, depending on your thread type, you can singe it to close it a little bit. And then I'm going to use a safety pin to thread through my cord. Okay. And our opening. Okay. And you're going to work it all the way around the bag, back to this side of the opening. And this is the back side of the bobby pin, and I'm pushing it forward and gathering some fabric. Right here's the front side, and then I pinch that down and I pull. Okay, so we're gonna bypass this opening. If you have the little grippy toggle pieces, you can just do single sided and use that grip in order to help it clinch close. But if you're doing the bell stops, this will be the gathering piece. And then and push it out the side and pull. And you can remove your safety pin, or you can use a threader to get it through there. I'm gonna singe the ends of my nylon cord a little bit. And then I'm going to take my bell stopper and push those through and then tie it off. Push the cap on if you have one. You can also glue these down if you would like to. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and repeat the same thing for your other string or cord. Just like doing this so it doesn't fray. Singeing it. And now we're going to go ahead and go in from the other side and thread our cord. If you have any fraying or oddness, you can singe if your material is okay to do that, or just clip them off if you're going to go ahead and use a cap end stopper. And pop your topper on. And then here is our completed Xaira charm. Thank you for joining me today in making this Xaira charm. I hope you had as much fun as I did making it and enjoyed seeing the bottom part of me making this hack for printed vinyl. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks. Bye.